Perfect. All right, thank you. My name is Ethan Baldwin. I'm a policy analyst for the Division of Financial Regulation, and this is the third meeting of the Rate Review Consumer Friendly Document Rulemaking Advisory Committee. Today's September 24th. We'll go ahead and start with introductions, starting on the DFR side. So if I could get DFR folks to introduce themselves.
Karen Winkle, and I'm the rules coordinator for the division on the policy team.
And hi, everyone. I'm Jesse O'Brien. I'm the manager of the policy team.
Great. Thank you. Next, we'll just go ahead and introduce everyone else on the phone.
Hi, Ethan. This is Antoinette from Cambia Health, and I'm actually just here temporarily because I'm at the airport. But Dan Boder, who I'll have him introduce himself, will be sitting in on my behalf because I'm about to take off. Thank you.
Thanks, Antoinette. This is Dan.
He's one of our actuaries, one of the best ones.
Great.
Hi, this is Charlie Fisher, State Director with OSPERG. We're a statewide public interest group, and also joined by my colleague, Andrew Kielbach.
Hello, my name's Andrew, and yeah, I'm here with OSPERG.
Hi, David Liebert with Actuary with Kaiser.
And Merlene Converse with Kaiser, attending as an interested party.
Alex Vanos, Moda Health.
Tara Harrison with Providence Health Plan.
Hi, this is Katie Button. I do policy and plan management for the Oregon Health Insurance Marketplace.
Robin here with the Nearwater Resources, a small business.
Miriam Herman, Manager of Regulatory Affairs at HealthNet.
All right, do we have anyone else? Tasha, I saw you joined. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Couldn't find the mute button. Sorry about that, Ethan. Tasha Sizemore, Life and Health Product Regulation Manager for the division.
Great. Do we have anyone else? I think that's everyone. So we'll go ahead and jump into the agenda. So the next item after introduction was to discuss executive compensation. During the last two meetings that we've had for this RAC, executive compensation was an item that was discussed for this document. We heard a lot of good information and feedback from the RAC. We also received comments offline separately. And based on the feedback we've received, we've gone ahead and decided to pull the executive compensation from this rulemaking for this year. The division does still recognize that this is an important piece of information that consumers, do care about. And so we're going to explore other possibilities, other routes to get this information out at a later time. But for the purposes of this rule, we will go ahead and no longer keep the executive compensation in. Anyone have any thoughts or concerns or questions? Jesse, go ahead.
Not really a concern or question, but I just wanted to clarify that it was really helpful to get the feedback from Oregon Consumer Justice that regardless of whether this information was included in this particular document, it would be helpful to have it accessible to consumers in some way, and that is something that we are interested in looking at. It's not a piece of information that we actually need to get via this particular channel in order to provide some way of making it available. So we're going to look into that, and we'll have some more conversations with folks on the call who may be interested in how we do that at a later point, but it won't be part of this rule.
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
And
Any
I have
other
a question, Ethan.
Yeah, go
This
ahead.
is Antoinette from Canada. I have a question. So yeah, thanks for the clarification, Jesse. So I understand. So there is a possibility, or is Jesse saying that that information will, I guess the DFR is trying to discuss other ways to provide that information to consumers because it's something that's very important to consumers. So is it going to be outside of rulemaking as one of the possibilities of how the DFR will make that information possible? And I'm assuming that, as you said, carriers should be involved in that discussion, conversation, or whatever the DFR comes up with. Kind of similar to the rulemaking process, if it's going to be outside of rulemaking.
Yes, so the background of this, for those who are not tracking all of the different pieces of this, is that we do actually already receive the kind of information on executive compensation in financial filings. And so the idea would be to create some more accessible way of accessing that information for consumers who are interested in it. And we do not need to really address that in the rulemaking if it's not going to be in the specific disclosure that is at issue in the current rulemaking. But it is something that we are going to look into over the coming months, and we'll be happy to talk with carriers and others about. But I wouldn't anticipate it being a topic for rulemaking. It's just a question of kind of how and where to convey the information.
And again, I think all our comments based on the rulemaking still stand with respect to executive compensation. But I know when it comes time to that, we will present some further comments about exactly what part of executive compensation is disclosed to the public. But that's all I have to say. Sorry. I'll go off on mute now. I'm about to depart.
Thank you. Hopefully you have a good flight. Anyone else have any thoughts on the executive compensation, or are we ready to move on? All right, so we'll move on to the next item, which we sent around some draft rule text. Believe this captures the items that we discussed. There are a couple other ones that we added just for identification's sake, like the surf tracking number. But in general, some clarification as well about the network information we're looking to get. But in general, this is pretty accurate based on our conversations. So I guess I'll just open the floor up to everyone and welcome some feedback. And again, as always, we'll also take feedback offline if you have something written up or you'd like to write up something. But just for the purposes of right now, what are people's thoughts?
My first question is this going to be provided for each health plan? Meaning, again, if a provider is got 5 different gold plans, 5 different silver plans, 5 different bronze plans, there would be 15 of these, one for each plan.
No, so it'll be based on the rate filings. So if a company submits an individual rate filing in a small group, there'd be 2 of them, but not at the metal tier level.
I don't understand that. I need to think more about that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Charlie.
Hi, thanks for having me. And apologies for not being at previous meetings. So this may have been something that had already been discussed, but I think that my main takeaway from this is around 2H, breakdown of rate request attributed to the following. I guess my thinking is that I know and I agree, we want this to be streamlined and informative and not, like kind of overly descriptive. But I don't know, I just feel like only having those 3 categories might not be enough information. So one, it'd be great to have prescription drugs specifically pulled out as something that people can look at as separate from the rest of the trend. And then 2, I guess the other thought I had, and I is just, theoretically, if the percentage of the rate request that is made up of these 3 categories is only accounts for maybe 40 or 50 or whatever the number is percent of the overall increase. If I were just a layperson looking at that, I would wonder, what are the other reasons why this they're proposing to raise premiums. So I wonder if there's a way to have a category that says, any category that accounts for more than 5% of the rate increase, or it's some number has to be broken down individually, just so people do. I think we want to, obviously we don't want to overwhelm people, but I think we also run the risk of just not having enough information and people having questions that then they would have to dig into the really detailed filings and maybe not be able to find the answer. So I guess just broadly, I think I would want to maybe add a couple more categories of items that are included in H.
Sure, that makes sense. Those are good suggestions. David, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was going to make a different statement first, but I'm gonna address these comments that I think maybe just adding a 4th that says explain additional differences, because you can come up with a list of 10 things and you're still going to miss something. And a lot of this information, there is no digging around through the filing to find out what is that last thing that accounts for that last percentage of the rate increase. I mean, these are hard things to develop in the first place. So it's that's not going to be an obvious number. But yeah, I would recommend not making H too complex and just saying that we need to explain, if we have a 6% increase and A, B, and C only explain half of it, then there needs to be additional lines that we can add to explain the other half.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, can I actually interrupt you and ask real quick from an actual side? I don't, every rate filing is going to be unique, but would those cover most of the rate request, or would you expect that there'd be pretty broad categories that could include a significant amount, or I don't know if that's making sense.
I think that these do cover the majority of it. Market-wide uncertainty that can cover like changes in morbidity. It could cover changes due to stuff like the bridge plan. And I think the one thing that I don't see here is plan changes. plan changes themselves do have impact. That, you leave a plan, it's technically the same plan from one year to the next, but the plan design changed a little bit. So that might be the one thing that I would personally add as part of that differentiator, to fill in the gap. But no, I think that these three, and I think medical trend, it should actually just be medical and RX trend would cover, these three would cover most of it, I think.
Great,
But
thank you. And I think comment as
Yeah.
well, right?
My general statement was going to be that this is very, very similar to what carriers have been doing in Washington for, I don't know, 8 years now, and it works pretty well. And this is all information. Most of it's information that's already in the filings. So it's just gathering it into one place and making it more accessible without digging through what honestly are really very awful documents to dig through with the rate filing. So I think this is pretty good. I like what you put together here. And like, I thought the only thing that I would even need help with, or my team would need help with, is just the visual representation of the service area, just because we're not artists, so we're not going to get that map together. But otherwise, this is all stuff that's already in the filings, so it's just a matter of summarizing it, and I think this is really good right now.
Great, I appreciate that feedback. And yeah, that the visual representation would maybe the tough one, but I think for consumers and other people, that'll be a lot easier than looking at zip codes or area codes or counties and things like that.
And I'm not saying take it out. I'm saying leave it in. It's just if I have to ask for one thing from some other department, that's not a problem. It's just I like that one, so leave it in.
Perfect. I appreciate the feedback. So I see Rob, you have your hand, and then we'll go to, I think I saw Dan and then Charlie. So Rob, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. So I really appreciate Charlie's comments on this. I agree with David that we don't need to make it more complicated, but I do like the idea of adding prescription drugs, and I like the idea of plan changes, and that should technically tie into 2J down below. Like if there's network changes or something like that that go with the plan. You guys have to calculate what the actual rate increase is. My company is facing an 18.8% increase. So I'd love to know what that breakdown is. Do I need to be within 1% of that? No. But knowing what are the major factors that are part of that would be useful. And if those three categories plus prescription drugs and plan changes account for it, great. If not, then add another category. But you guys should already know what that is because you had to go through the process to calculate it. Again, I don't understand the answer to my earlier comment that if individual plans result in rate changes, it seems like there should be one of these for each plan, but someone can explain it to this dumb engineer differently and maybe I'll understand it, but that's my comments.
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on some of Dave's comments, just that this is a pretty similar format that gets submitted in other states. This is pretty much jives fairly well with the federal Part 2 template, just in justification of the rate increase. I was wondering if it might, because I'm thinking of Robert's comments here, that like this is all going to be average, like the average rate and change, the average impact of like benefits, and any consumer or any group could see something different. And it could get even more complicated if like that group's census has changed, if they've hired more people that have different ages, or they've got rid of people with different ages. So if the overall profile changes, that's just something that won't be captured here. So that's on a much more group by group specific basis. I think if you got for H, if you weren't so specific and you made it something like a breakdown of the substantial drivers of the rate increase and leave it up to the actuaries to decide what that is, because then we're going to make it out to be like the full list of things versus just like, well, you want these three things, so here they are. And it's like in many years, legislation can be zero. And you might have an increase of maybe 5% and medical trend is 10. It's like, well, how do you go from 10 to 5? But if you leave it up to the actuaries for the carriers and then the reviewing actuaries at the DFR to review this breakout, and they're like, well, your increases, let's just say it's 12, but these things add up to 8. What's the other 4? And then we can work together on getting that filled out. But if it were up to me and this was the breakout, I would give you these three things and nothing more. But if you made it outline the key drivers or whatnot of your rate increase, I'm going to make sure that you get down to an other bucket that's less than 1%. And one of the buckets there that's not captured here is just historical, like prior year financial experience. So how adequate were last year's rates? So if you find out that last year's rates weren't adequate, then that's going to be a driver going forward as well. So I do agree. Then if you make it less specific, then bringing in changes by network, changes by average plan design. So if the AV calculator just got changed significantly and the plan designs had to get richer or leaner, then you could put in the average change there. But I would vote for just less specificity here. And I think the actuaries in general would make sure that you get a well-populated list that captures all of the drivers. And then the other question I had is for the service area map, is that like where people can get care on their network, or is that where our sales service area is? And I think that would be just an important thing to just be clear of that. You might only sell in certain parts of the state, but they might have coverage throughout the state potentially, depending on the network.
Thanks for the feedback. Tasha, I will ask you on the visual representation of changes in service areas, which were you leaning? Because we can be specific on that.
I don't know if I was leaning one way or another, and I think so the idea of highlighting potentially counties that are leading the network or something like that on a map might be helpful, but I keep going back and forth, so I don't know which way I'm leaning. Ethan, short answer.
Yeah, my initial take of G was that you'd want to know the sales service area by network. So as I read it, that's what I read it as.
Robert, yeah. Or actually, Charlie, I think you were next, and then Robert will go with you.
Yeah, thanks. And first of all, I really appreciate the conversation here. It's very informative. So two things, one kind of following up on what others have said, and then another thought. So I think from a consumer perspective, we would want both a list of kind of the things that people, when they think about a rate increase, are maybe assuming are involved. And so that's, like the things that are listed on here. And then I think, like my suggestion, plus pharmacy. And so even if it isn't a very, like in the case where one of those categories actually was very low, if it just wasn't included, I think people would maybe not understand why. And, so having it there and saying, oh, actually, in this year, it's not very much, I think is a helpful component for people who are coming to this without too much information. The second part of that is, I think, to Dave's point, I think that's why I suggested maybe and tell me if which would be hard to actually do, but set a threshold of, so the 3 or 4 components that people come to the website looking for and assuming are going to be involved, and then all other components that account for more than 5% of the overall rate increase, or what the number is. Maybe is something that would be worth discussing, but having a threshold that says any, basically de minimis cause should be included, and 5 or 10% above that threshold. And then the second piece, which I guess is related to this, is just I'm hoping that, and I didn't see it here, but maybe it'll be provided by the agency or somewhere else, but just plain language descriptions of what these things mean. So if I saw the percentage for medical trend, and I had never seen one of these before, I might be able to guess what it means, but it would be really good to have a clear, plain language description of what all of the different components mean. And so whether that's requiring the company that's filing to provide that, or coming up with a standard set of definitions that are really prominently displayed or are part of as a appendix or glossary of every filing, I think would be really helpful to actually make these usable to people who spend the time looking for them, but then may get there and realize, oh, I don't really understand what this means.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I know in the Washington example I saw, they had an appendix. My first thought would be that we would probably want the division to do that, just so that it was the same across all of these. We could just make it a separate document on wherever we post this. We could have that as like an explanatory document. So likely we'd be able to do that outside of the rulemaking, just having our staff create a document that lists key definitions in plain language. But that's a really good suggestion. Thank you. Rob.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty disappointed by this whole endeavor. I definitely appreciate the additional detail. What I'm really struggling with is this idea that you want to give averages, you want to give generalizations, when people want to know if you've been on the same plan for 5 years and all of a sudden in the 6th year you have an 18% increase. You want to know why and how much influence you have over any of it. You guys have some super complicated formulas on how you figured this all out, but health insurance is one of the few things in life you get to shop around, but it's not like going to Amazon where you have 1,000 different choices on who you can buy something from. So there's a good number of companies on this call, but I can count the numbers on my hands, right? I'm really struggling with why this all can't be much more transparent and why it can't be specific in a way that a user of a plan who's shopping for plans can understand what's going on. I just don't get it. All of the information that you guys calculate and figure out, you use computers for it. It's all digital, at least I'd like to hope it is. I just don't understand why it can't be boiled down to something meaningful to a consumer and not need a PhD to translate it or understand how an average that's provided is different than what you might be looking at for the 3 different plans you're considering purchasing. I'm just struggling with why this is being made obtuse instead of very clear and concise. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely fair feedback. And that is one of the goals of this, is to try and get the information out there to be more user friendly. I think I can't speak for everyone, but I think the difficulty we would have doing this on a almost like a person by person, plan by plan level is these would no longer be streamlined documents. They'd be pretty extensive. And so I think the goal right now is to try and get something streamlined that is a good starting point to start those kinds of conversations. But yeah, we hear what you're saying. It's tough out there. Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Couldn't get off mute. Yeah, I mean, I really sympathize with your comments just now, and it is really complicated. And I mean, well, the other added wrinkle here that this doesn't capture is just like you're the same group as you were last year, but everybody got a year older, and the age curve has varying steps based on age, and there's unlimited permutations of ages by groups. So that's a factor that wouldn't be accounted for in the average increase here, because the age curves don't change. And then when you're looking at it, just informationally, if you're looking at it from a plan by plan basis, if one's higher or lower, I mean, I don't want to say simply driven by, but it's driven by how that plan design has changed from last year. So if you see one that's getting more expensive than another, the cost shares, the out-of-pocket max, the deductibles, things like that just got richer or leaner, which is creating that deviations. And it's that's where it gets down to, and you need a lot of information there.
Well, that's
to
exactly what I wanted 2J to be. What you just described, Daniel, is what I wanted 2J to be, is when you change the prescription drug part, or when you change the network, or when you change the deductible, or whatever that affects the rates. I mean, that's what should be in 2J, but if you're doing it as an average, how is anyone supposed to translate that to what they're shopping for?
Is it useful just to see how the cost shares have changed between the plans from one year to another? And without like a percent impact of those, like you change the deductible from 10,000 to 10,600, like rather than putting a percent on that, you can just see like, yep, this plan design was this last year, it's this year.
Maybe. I mean,
Because we do one of the,
like I said in our last call, my insurance provider dumped 200 pages on me, literally physical pages that I'm supposed to somehow review and make sense of, which is nonsense. As a small
and
business owner, I don't have time to do that.
yeah.
So,
So I guess the
I
one
mean,
thing
I
I'd say
just,
for the committee here is we do have the Oregon Exhibit 2 that does outline. There's a page there that outlines how the cost shares have changed, for at least for the major categories, and just kind of maybe just taking that second page of the table that's there that compares how those cost shares have changed from one year to the next. That might be a useful addition.
sounds like it.
And then, I mean, I'll just put a plug there for Regents, I guess, at least. I know if you were to request more information around drivers, those things do land on my desk, and then we do look specifically at your census and outline how you're getting to an 18% increase or a 1% increase, whatever it is, looking at that group's specific situation.
Well, then maybe we should have a call offline because it's Regents who's my provider for my company, and
Okay.
I feel like it's pulling teeth to understand what I have in front of me. And so I just don't understand why, like, people can buy $100,000 car and there's less paperwork. People can buy a house and there's less paperwork. But those are optional. Health insurance isn't optional. And it seems to be way more complicated. Like I downloaded last year a bunch of the submissions that you all make to either the federal government or the state of Oregon, and it was hundreds and hundreds of pages per plan. You know, in the years past, I signed up under the ACA for a plan, and I was told to go to page 167 of 205 of my plan document to see a footnote on a table to tell me that because I didn't have my dental coverage with that provider in the previous 12 months, even though I was covered, that was not good enough. And therefore, I couldn't be covered. That was nowhere in a summary document. That was nowhere in the website. You had to go to a footnote on page 167 of 205. Come on. That's like deliberately hiding it at that point. I mean, we shouldn't have to spend our evenings reviewing hundreds of pages of our insurance agreement to understand what's covered and not covered. We've all got better things to do with our time. And so I only see this document that we're proposing in this rulemaking as the tip of the iceberg of what needs to get done. I have a PhD in engineering and I don't understand it. So how do you expect someone who's got a high school diploma who has no experience beyond that to know how to interpret this stuff?
Yeah, it is very complicated. And that may be a good way to describe that this is a tip of the iceberg. So any other thoughts on any other parts of the text? Again, we will welcome, written comments and everything when people want to go more in depth, but at this point, any more comments on that one? All right, well, I will just assume that it's perfectly written otherwise and go from there. So the next item on our agenda is an example of the summary document. Now, I want to be completely clear. By no means is this the document that you will be submitting. We are not doing a template this time around. We did not have time to get one together. I just very quickly kind of threw something together. A couple members of the RAC asked for like an example of what it would look like, or what a submission could look like. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it's just an example. So I don't know that there's a lot to discuss. Karen, would it be possible to pull that up? Thank you. Again, this is not something that you have to fill out and submit exactly the same way. It's just to give an idea of, kind of an expectation of what we would look for, all the criteria being met, the information from the company, the website, phone number, all that. Preferably in the order of the rule. Text would be great so that it's pretty similar. People can follow it. And yes, we will. Well, yeah, it does say not been verified by the Office of the Insurance Commissioner. That was just a typo. But again, this is not a document you'll be submitting verbatim. So does this help kind of guide what people, what submitters would have? Anyone have any thoughts or questions or concerns based on just the idea of what needs to be turned in when we get to the final rule?
I would recommend not using 10-point font or smaller.
Good suggestion.
When you have the plans impacted section there, what does that mean? Is that like, are you looking for new plans, discontinued plans, just all the plans? Like, I'm not sure what plans impacted means.
Yeah, so what we have is in the rule text of the plans impacted by the rate request. So that would be any plans that, that the rate request would apply to. I'm not sure if is there a way to specify that more, or?
I mean, there's the only thing I'm confused by is it impacts all plans. So that's where I'm just unsure what I'd have to look back at the text that we showed up before, but like it's the rate filing for all of the plans. So I could see if maybe it was a plan, if it was like a terminated plans or new plans being offered. And if it's not listed, then everything's there. I mean, you could see in small group that list could be extraordinarily large for a carrier. It would be smaller for individual just due to the plan limitation nature of that market, but you could end up with just a very lengthy list. But if you left it to describe, like list the new or terminated plans, or maybe it's just list the terminated plans, because that seems to me that's what a consumer would be most interested in there, of like, is my plan going to still be offered?
Does anyone have any thoughts on that point?
I do agree. I do agree with that. Just listening to plans impacted. If you had, I'm going to go with something real simplistic. Let's say you got 15 plans now. 3 of them are being terminated and 2 new ones. How do you write that up? I would think that Personally, I would probably write that up as just a short sentence saying, of the 15 plans in 2025, 10 are continuing, 5 are terminating, and there are 3 new plans. But it might be worth listing what those terminating plans are.
Yeah,
I
think if you did it by, gold, silver, whatever level would be useful. Still could be one sentence.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we use similar verbiage in the filing description. That's part of the filings currently.
Similar.
Yeah, I don't want this to get too big and become a 5-page document, but I'm just thinking for myself, I would put more than just plans impacted -15. I would write up something, a little something to go with that.
I think that would be a great idea, and I don't want it to be 5 pages either.
Because you could have a situation where a carrier in small group maybe has 15 different products on 2 or 3 different networks, and now you're up to 45 plans impacted. And as a consumer, I'd be like, what am I going to do? What am I doing with this?
Sure, that makes sense. So what I'm hearing is maybe something like a description of plans impacted by the rate request, including plans terminated, or is there maybe a way that would be more to the point?
Yeah, I mean, is that a like? Yeah, I think kind of focusing in on that terminated piece, and I think if just outlining how many plans there are in total, and then which plans have been terminated for the following year.
So rather than listing each plan, just listing a total number of plans by metal tier, and then also a separate subsection for terminated, would that kind of get at what we're discussing here?
I think if you said like all plans except the list below, which are terminated, that would cover it, because I mean a lot of plans tend to change names year to year. So like if we listed a plan, what name do you list it as? Do you list it as the prior year or the future year? And that list, yeah, I think Dan said you could have 45. I think we have more than that, a lot more than that, and you don't want to see that full list. But that list of just the few plans that are terminated, and just say everything else is continued, I think that would be valuable.
Agreed.
All right, so we'll go more towards terminated than impacted. Okay, sounds good.
Well, I think you want to still say impacted. I mean, I think that's still fine to say everything's impacted except these 5.
I think that sounds great.
All right. So then any other thoughts, on either I mean, again, this is not a template, it's just an example. So, I'm not sure if anyone has any more thoughts on that. All right. So then,
I guess the one question I have, and I'm trying to see what I can do with Robert's questions here and concerns. We still run into the issue of aging and census changes, but we have what the requested percent rate changes, and I know we have an exhibit out there, Exhibit 3 with the state, that shows the summary of the rate change, and it includes the minimum and the maximum. I mean, would that be useful to include in that rate change perspective? So while we have an average of X, the min and max could be -1 to +16. And then when somebody gets an increase that's 4% or 5% above the average, they're not completely confused. I mean, still mostly confused, but not entirely.
I think that would be an improvement.
And it's already included in the rate filing and other documents, so I don't see an issue with including it here personally.
Sounds
Well,
great
are
to
you?
me.
So are you saying to pull another exhibit?
No, just this filing reflects an average rate change of 10%. This is an average that varies based off of age, plan, area. So the minimum and the maximum, and I guess it would be net of age and census changes, is 0 to 15%. And the average is 10, or maybe the average is 5, and it goes from 0 to 15 because you have one plan that has a big change, or maybe there's one with a big negative because there's a big change. But just to kind of get that universe of what the rate changes consumers could see before group census changes and aging.
I think that could be really instructive because it puts whatever you might be looking at for your own plan in the context of that range, right? Some people will look at their individual plan and say, my rate changed 2%. Well, that's well within the range, right? Obviously, each plan has its own factors, as you said earlier. But what I'm worried about is if you say on average and the min and max, if the min and max range is 0 to 15%, but my plan is 18.8% increase, why, right? So maybe there needs to be a little caveat statement saying, these changes are not specific to individual plans as to who the customer is, but I don't know. There needs to be some kind of a little bit of a caveat put in there that while this can be instructive, it may not reflect the actual rate change that your specific plan is experiencing, which I would personally find confusing, but it's better than nothing.
All right. So that's good feedback. It sounds like we're gonna tweak a few parts of the rule language potentially. And again, we'll wait for written feedback as well. So let's go ahead and move next to the statement of need and fiscal impact. This is a document that goes ahead and accompanies all of our rulemaking. So it's one that the division writes up, and then we're sharing it for feedback. Specifically, we are looking for kind of thoughts on the equity statement, cost of compliance, and small business portion. So I'll go ahead and jump to the equity. So I'm sorry, mine's being a little slower here on my end. So the way we viewed it is that it's unlikely that this will impact one group of people differently than others because consumers have the choice to purchase different health plans. Does anyone have any thoughts on the equity statement in this one? Or any disagreements?
I have the general disagreement that, again, there's 5-6 providers in the state. It's very different than 12 car companies, 42 tire companies. Amazon has tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of vendors. It's not the same. So whether that actually comes into this equity in the state, I have no idea. So
yeah, I think that what we're looking at is just essentially how this rule applies to everyone. So is anyone being unfairly or not, not receiving the same benefit from this document versus is it helping other people more than others? So yeah, that's.
I understand.
Yeah. Good feedback. So then we also look at the cost of compliance and for cost of compliance. And based on our view, the cost of compliance, at least for our carriers, would likely be minimal as far as administrative, because most of this information is already in rate filings, and it would just be a matter of pulling it out and putting it into one document. And as Dave mentioned, there might be a little bit of creating a new map visual aid. So a small increase in administrative costs. There's likely no fiscal impact from this document to individual consumers. And it does not have an economic impact on the general public beyond the underlying statutory requirements. Any thoughts there? All right. As far as the number and type of small businesses subject to the rule, no health insurers meet the definition of small business under our statutes. So yeah, and then how are small businesses involved? We have members of organizations representing small businesses. So, all right. Does anyone have any other thoughts on the statement? All right. Well, then we've gotten to the end of the formal agenda, other than the public comment. So we can open it up now to public comment. Anyone from the public, as well as anyone from the RAC who has some final parting thoughts for this specific rule or this meeting. All right. Well, with that in mind, we'll go ahead and wrap up. As far as the next steps, we'll go ahead and have keep a public comment period open. If members of the RAC could submit comments to me no later than Friday, October 3rd, close of business, specifically around rule text, thoughts on that would be helpful, because unless we have a real strong need, this will likely be, or hopefully be, the last meeting, because we do need to get this rule filed soon. So any feedback, the sooner the better, but otherwise we'll look for close of business October 3rd. That works for everyone. All right. Well, with that, I'll give you back some time. I appreciate all of the feedback and constructive conversation here, and all the time everyone's given. It's been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.